Data, I think you might be on mute.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me now?
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. I'm Daita Sergi, Education Programs Manager with ASHI, and I'll be the moderator today. It is my pleasure to welcome you all. As many of you know, ASHI's mission is to inspire and catalyze higher education to lead the global sustainability transformation. We are an international association with about 1,000 members spread across more than 20 countries, including Mexico and Singapore. We serve as the professional home for campus sustainability staff, but we offer resources for everyone in higher education. We provide an expansive collection of online resources, networking tools, and educational events such as today's webinar, as well as an annual conference and expo, which will take place this year in Spokane, Washington from October 27 to the 30th. We hope to see you all at the conference. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. Everyone in the audience is on mute, but please feel free to ask questions or provide comments at any point during the presentation. You can do that by typing your questions or comments in the questions pane in the control panel on your screen. If you have additional questions, please email them to education@ash.org and we will get back to you. At the end of the webinar, you'll have the opportunity to provide feedback regarding today's presentation. We take your suggestions into account when planning for future webinars, so please do provide this feedback. Please know this webinar is being recorded. If you experience technical difficulties or have to leave early, you and others can view the recording later. The recording and presentation materials will all be available in the Campus Sustainability Hub after the live broadcast. Today's webinar was proposed to ASHI by Brendan Hall, EPA's Energy Star Program Manager. He had this idea of bringing together presenters from all these different organizations to talk about their sustainability tools. Thanks to his and the people from Aritech Advisors prep work, we are able to offer this webinar today. It is my pleasure to welcome all attendees and thank you for joining us today. At this time, I'm going to turn things over to Brendan to get us started.
All right. Hi, everybody. Just making sure that my screen is visible to you. Is that showing up? Could someone confirm really quick?
We can see the desktop, but we don't see the slideshow.
Sorry about that. All right. Well, thank you, Data, for...
Brendan, one more little detail. If you can go into the slideshow and click under display settings up on the top and switch swap. Perfect.
Sorry about that. Thank you. So I wanted to thank everyone for attending and Data and ASHI for hosting us today. As Data mentioned, my name is Brendan Hall. I'm the Energy Star Higher Ed Lead, and I'm pleased to, be on this webinar with you all today. Thank you in advance for attending. Hopefully you're in the right place. And thank you to all of our other presenters today on the sustainability tools. So our intent today is to provide a practical understanding of how data management is changing and how tools can help you achieve your energy and sustainability goals. So with the help of RETEC, who supports Energy Star's work in higher ed, we've done some overview of these different tools, and they've graciously agreed to help present on their tools. So hopefully you'll walk away with a better sense of things. So we're going to start with an overview, some important trends first in sustainability and data management, an overview of the tools. Then each tool will through a representative, talk through their tool and give you a quick sense of things. We'll talk next steps and have plenty of time in the end for Q&A. So Data alluded to the different folks we have on the line here. Includes myself, Mark Orlowski from Sustainable Endowments Institute and their GRITS tool, Jen Andrews from UNH and their SIMAP tool, Chris Pelton from STARS, Steve Muzzy from Second Nature, and Kat Wagenschutz from USGBC. With that, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Joe at RETEC.
All right, hey everybody, it's a great pleasure to be with you today. As Brendan said, my name is Joe Invick. I'm a manager in the sustainability practice at RETEC Advisors here in the Washington, DC area, and I'm also the head of clean energy finance for our team here. And I've been working in higher education sustainability for pretty much my entire career, so about a decade. I've done a variety of work on green revolving funds, including establishing $1 million green revolving fund at Dartmouth College as a student, as well as on greenhouse gas inventories and strategic energy planning in the higher ed sector. And frankly, I think the market has sorely needed a webinar like this for a very long time. I mean, just in the last few years, it's become easier than ever to use software, not just to track and report on sustainability performance, but to actively identify and pursue improvement opportunities using that software. But at the same time, it's very exciting, but it's also pretty frightening to a lot of folks. I've talked to dozens of higher education leaders who are frankly just completely confused about the number and complexity of tools that are out there, and you can't really blame them. There's a ton of nuance to consider. So what I want to do before we get into the individual presentations is to try and summarize and kind of demystify the leading tools in the marketplace to help you get your head around their capabilities at a high level before we dive into specifics. So as a starting point, I asked around to some of my colleagues in the sector, and they generally agreed that there are some important trends in sustainability data management that we want to consider. And so I've distilled those down into 4 trends I want to briefly walk you through at this moment. There we go. So the first is a general transition from spreadsheet to software, right? The world is starting to look a lot different than it did 5 or 10 years ago, where most energy and sustainability data was managed in disaggregated spreadsheets. And I'm sure a lot of you have felt the pain from this, right? You have the facilities team that has their giant workbook of energy data. You've got the CFO with her own tracker. You've got the sustainability team trying desperately to synthesize all those disparate worksheets together, and it winds up taking 50 or 60% of their time just to do that. Fortunately, this is changing for a lot of institutions as part of this move towards software. And I think one of the big reasons for that is that software is getting cheaper. It's getting more streamlined. It's getting more painless for both technical and non-technical users, and it's getting more integrated with these tools better and better able to speak to each other and share data between each other. And frankly, there's simply more of it. I mean, most of the major sustainability data functions can now be done with software, and I think that's one of the big reasons we're able to put together a webinar like we have here today. This wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago, say. The second trend is that there's a big push for institutions to establish greenhouse gas reduction targets, climate action plans, public climate commitments, and I think for obvious good reason. But in preparing and managing those greenhouse gas inventories, there is potentially a huge amount of complexity here, right? Emissions factors are changing all the time. Activity data is constantly shifting. If you'll permit me to get really nerdy for a second, you have to decide things like, should we use the gross calorific values for our natural gas emissions or the net calorific values? So wherever there's that level of complexity, it usually means that software is a good natural fit to help make that process easier. So we're very fortunate to have both SIMAP and Second Nature with us today, which help schools prepare and report on their greenhouse gas emissions. A third trend is that energy and sustainability are increasingly being seen not just as the right thing to do, but as a source of substantial ROI and potential cash flows through energy savings or other resource savings. And when you look across green revolving funds and other investment programs like the Sustainable Endowments Institute has done, you will routinely see that schools have achieved an average of 15 to 30% ROI across thousands of individual measures. And interestingly, that's true even for funds that have been in operation for more than a decade. So even if you've eaten up a lot of the low-hanging fruit, technology costs have continued to decline, with things like LEDs and solar photovoltaics declining precipitously over the last decade, which in turn unlocks new investment opportunities with a solid return. So we're going to hear more about this from Mark at GRITS, which helps schools to track and manage their energy and sustainability investments in a little bit. And the final trend is that institutions are increasingly comparing and sort of competing with their peers in terms of energy and sustainability performance. And frankly, I think telling a good story about why your school is a leader in this area is really necessary to attract a lot of the top students who increasingly care about sustainability and will make school selection decisions based partially at least on sustainability performance. But from an operations perspective, benchmarking is also a great way to understand where you're leading and where you're lagging relative to your peers, so you can shore up your weakest practices and identify, where the most room for improvement resides. This is also an opportunity, by the way, to demonstrate concrete leadership with things like scores and certifications, which we're going to get into today. So we'll hear from STARS and Portfolio Manager, which enable benchmarking at the organization and building level, respectively. And then we'll also hear from USGBC's LEED program, which provides certification and recognition for sustainability performance. So with those trends in mind, I want to provide kind of a brief overview of the tools that we're going to go hear from today, as well as a summary of how they compare to each other in terms of features and how they integrate in terms of data sharing. So let's start with the three tools that are used kind of primarily at the organization level, and then we'll do property and project level next. So first you have STARS, which enables you to measure and benchmark your institution's overall sustainability performance at a high level, and then use that to inform things like strategic planning and to track and performance improvements over time. Second is SIMAP, which is the leading tool for measuring, calculating, and reporting on institutional carbon and nitrogen footprints, while also benchmarking those footprints against your peers and competitors. And then we have the Second Nature reporting platform, which allows institutions to annually report their greenhouse gas inventories and then to gauge progress towards things like climate action plans and climate resilience targets. Moving into the tools that operate more at the property or project level, first you have Energy Star's Portfolio Manager, which enables you to track, analyze, and report on things like energy, water, waste, materials, and energy-related greenhouse gas emissions at the property level. The tool also assigns, and you may be familiar with, an Energy Star score, which is great for kind of easy comparison against peers and can also lead to building certification if the score is high enough. Then we have USGBC's LEED program, which I'm sure everyone here has heard of, that certifies the design, construction, and operation of green buildings. And now, if I'm not mistaken, just checked the database this morning, appears to have over 100,000 participating properties of some type, many of which are in higher education. And finally, we have GRITS, which is a unique tool that enables you to track, analyze, and share financial and carbon saving impacts of individual projects. So things like energy conservation measures, water and waste reduction projects, and renewable energy capacity or renewable energy installations. So to summarize these tools, we put together this comparison table, and you can see the tools going across the top of the table and the individual features going along the y-axis there. And again, as Data said, we're going to be sharing these slides after the webinar, so there's no need to try to internalize this now, but I did want to use this as a sort of map to help us get the lay of the land before we dive into these individual tool presentations. So looking first at the energy and sustainability performance tracking and benchmarking section at the top, you can see that the tools are roughly in order, going from project level on the left to property level in the middle to organization level on the right, with one exception, and that is that LEED provides tools for both properties and individual projects, as you're going to hear about in a little bit. And I should also note that this isn't really an exhaustive list. Like, for example, GRITS tracks data at the project level, but that could also be aggregated up to the portfolio or the organization level. So what this table really tries to do is capture the primary thing that each tool helps you track and manage. Moving on to the greenhouse gas emissions calculation and reporting section, the tools, again, flow roughly in the same pattern here. So GRITS tracks impacts in terms of carbon and greenhouse gases at the individual project level. Portfolio Manager and LEED can give you insight into the greenhouse gas impacts of properties. And then SIMAP can be used to prepare comprehensive greenhouse gas inventories for either a set of properties or for an entire organization. And here, the Second Nature and STARS tools are primarily focused on reporting out on greenhouse gas inventories that have been prepared through other tools like SIMAP. And finally, in the certification and recognition section, I won't review this thoroughly because, as you can see, there's a whole lot of diversity here in the types of features that these tools offer, but many tools offer some sort of scoring for peer comparison. Portfolio Manager and LEED offer green building certifications, as I mentioned. Several of the tools have public dashboards that enable you to share your results with your campus community or with the market at large. And then most of these tools offer some sort of reporting functionality where you can output results in a nice PDF or a spreadsheet or web link or some other format. So as my last point here before we get into the tool presentations, I want to talk a little bit about how these tools can integrate and share data with each other. Because there are so many tools available, it's a bit of a godsend, frankly, when they can kind of seamlessly share information. And fortunately, that's getting easier every year. So there's 3 types of sharing that goes on between these tools, as you can see by the color coding here. So the orange lines show data sharing, where raw data is actually transferred from one tool to another using either an API integration, if you want to get into the technical stuff, or just a spreadsheet upload. So for example, raw property level data from Portfolio Manager can be easily shared with GRITS, Second Nature, LEED, and STARS, and SIMAP data feeds directly into the Second Nature reporting platform. Then the blue lines show instances where a score or a result from one tool is displayed in another tool. So for example, Second Nature will display your STARS rating, and STARS will reward participants who have LEED certified buildings. And then finally, some of these tools have kind of a beneficial business or cost relationship as well. So for example, Second Nature and Portfolio Manager users can both access GRITS Basic for free. So to summarize, as you've probably already concluded, many institutions are finding that there's a benefit to using several of these tools in conjunction, and an increasing number of integrations like this are making that a lot easier than it's ever been before. Okay, so now that we've reviewed the landscape, I'm very excited to say that we'll have a chance to hear from all 6 of these tools. So we're going to go in this order that you see here, starting with the organization level tools and then working our way down to the project level tools. So I will now hand it over to Chris Pelton from STARS.
All right, thanks, Joe. Hi, everybody. STARS is the Sustainability Tracking Assessment and Rating System. And as Joe mentioned, it's a transparent self-reporting platform for colleges and universities to measure their sustainability performance. ASHE launched STARS in 2009, to address a number of needs that had emerged in the campus sustainability community. First of all, to provide a collective framework for defining and understanding sustainability in a higher ed context. So really sort of a high level goal. Second, to enable meaningful comparisons between institutions and over time. Third, to create incentives that can drive continual improvement toward sustainability on campuses. Fourth, to facilitate information sharing, so about sustainability challenges and best practices in addressing those challenges in higher education. And finally, to support sustainability officers and more broadly sort of help build the campus sustainability community. So some of the key aspects of STARS. STARS has a large and increasingly international user base. So right now there are more than 950 higher ed institutions in 40 countries that are participating in STARS. And while most of those participants use the framework to publicly report their sustainability data, others also use STARS less informally, so as a planning tool or a data management system. And STARS does provide a comprehensive sort of a whole campus assessment, and it addresses sustainability across the board in curriculum and research, student, staff, public engagement, operations, planning, administration, innovation. So it's a really comprehensive framework. And what this means is that the data reported through STARS is typically aggregated. So for example, STARS would capture total campus energy use rather than energy use per building. And ASHE provides public recognition for STARS participants in 2 ways. One, through the Sustainable Campus Index, which is an annual publication that features top performers in 17 different impact areas in STARS. But most prominently, it's through the rating system. So ASHE awards performance-based ratings based on the score achieved through STARS. And at any particular time, about a third of participants will have a STARS bronze, silver, gold, or platinum rating. Another characteristic of STARS is that it's driven by a participatory governance process. So there's an elected steering committee, there's more specific technical committees, open public comment periods, and a detailed and transparent methodology that's published in the form of the STARS technical manual. And I should say, you know, in developing and refining STARS, the governing bodies all aim to avoid duplication of effort to the extent that we can. So where it's feasible, we try to defer to or align with other standards, frameworks, and tools that are used in higher ed, as I think you'll hear a little bit more later. As far as participation goes, there is a free option available for institutions that want to track data outside the rating process, but paid participation is required to earn a STARS rating. And importantly, ASHE provides staff support for participants. So we manage a number of mechanisms to assist participants with their reporting, answer questions, and also help ensure the quality of the data that gets reported to the system. These measures include a collaborative review and revision process, and that process is set up where our team helps participants identify and address inconsistencies in the data before the report's published, before a rating's awarded. And in addition, all of the information that's published through STARS is publicly available and subject to public inquiry to try to identify errors. Participation in STARS is done through an online reporting tool, and here's just sort of a screenshot of what that looks like. And this is where an institution can track and manage that sort of high-level sustainability data. And the tool allows an institution to name as many users as it wants. They can log into the system, document and store information. If they're paid participants, their score is calculated automatically, all that sort of thing. The information that's saved in the reporting tool can then be shared publicly in a STARS report. It can be shared internally with campus stakeholders, and it can also be shared with third-party organizations. So right now we have partnerships with Sierra Magazine and the Princeton Review, and they use STARS data and STARS ratings to inform their own green rankings each year. In addition, ASHE also provides a companion benchmarking tool. We just launched this past year, and this allows ASHE members to compare their performance as reported through STARS. They can compare it against their own performance over time or against other institutions, as you see here. Users can generate, save, and share data views, and they can also export the data for offline analysis. And in terms of sort of where we are with STARS, we expect to release a new version, STARS 2.2, in the coming weeks. And that'll include a number of enhancements, one of which will be to map STARS credits to the Sustainable Development Goals. The idea here is to support those institutions that want to use STARS to report on their contributions to the SDGs. Another enhancement particularly relevant to this webinar is we are introducing a few kind of minor changes, but changes that are the intent of which is to align more closely with some of the other platforms and minimize data entry errors. So for example, the new version will be requesting electricity in kilowatt hours rather than BTUs as in previous versions, which is the more common metrics that's requested. And finally, the new version will include a reporting assurance credit. And this is really to incentivize independent review of reports. STARS has always been a self-reporting platform, but we've increasingly been encouraging third-party review, peer review, in independent review on campus as a way to ensure that the quality of the data is there. And finally, I will say that planning's already underway for STARS 3.0, which will be the second major revision of the framework. That development process will probably take a couple of years at least. And along the way, we're also planning a rebuild of the reporting tool. And during that process, we're really interested in exploring opportunities to further align with other frameworks and tools, The potential of kind of linking automatically and being able to move data between systems would be amazing. There are challenges there, obviously, but I think there's great potential there to kind of lessen the workload for everybody and get better results. So that's STARS in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks a ton, Chris. That was great. As we switch over to Jen Andrews from SIMAP here, I just want to remind everyone, I see some questions rolling in, but you're welcome to ask questions at any point. And if your question is for a specific speaker, please note that person. You should be able to ask questions, as Data said, in the chat box in your webinar interface. So Jen, over to you.
Great, thank you. Let's get this going here. So I want to echo the thanks to the organizers, to my colleague presenters, and to all of you for being part of this conversation, which has been an important one to me for a while. I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about SIMAP, the Sustainability Indicators Management and Analysis Platform, which is an online platform that combines two tools. The first, of course, is a carbon tracking tool, which was first developed in collaboration between the UNH Sustainability Institute and the nonprofit Cleaner Cool Planet in 2001 as an Excel spreadsheet, which was then iterated over a decade plus, developed into a web platform in collaboration with Sightlines called Carbon Map, iterated more, brought back to UNH. And it also combines a nitrogen footprint tool, which was developed at the University of Virginia in 2009. And that also started its life as an Excel-based tool. And there are some lead researchers across the globe working on nitrogen footprints who collaborated in 20 institutions globally and pilot tested and iterated that model. And so back in 2015, 2016, we started talking about integrating these two footprint tools into one online platform with functionality driven by our user community. And so many of us are familiar with carbon footprinting. I'm going to take 30 seconds to do a tiny bit of education because P.S. I think a lot fewer of us are familiar with nitrogen footprinting, and I wasn't terribly familiar with it until.
Hey Jen, sorry to interrupt you. It looks like you're not in presentation mode. Might just want to. At least we're still seeing your PowerPoint in standard editing mode here.
Okay, sorry, I'm seeing it, and thank you for that. I'm seeing it in presentation mode, so that's confusing to me. I apologize. Try it again.
Yeah, if you go into presentation mode and then click on swap screens and that settings button at the top, that should do it.
I'm sorry, give me a moment here. Sorry, which toolbar did you just say?
If you can see it in presentation mode, there should be a little button at the top that lets you, I think it's called settings, and it lets you say swap screens. Or you can just present it in editing mode too. That should be fine.
Okay, I'll interject here. So Jen, can you start your your screen share again, please?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only toolbar I can see is the Go meeting. I apologize, y'all.
Okay, I'll remake you the presenter so you can get a pop-up on your screen and click on it to share your screen, please.
Yeah.
Okay, share your screen. And on the control panel, under the sharing pane, you can choose which window to show. Perfect, there you go. We're in screen show mode, full screen now, so you can go ahead.
Weird, okay, all right. I didn't actually change anything, but all right, so this looks right now?
Yep, looks good.
Beautiful, sorry about that. All right, so nitrogen footprint. It's an important, but it's an often overlooked aspect of campus operations. The nitrogen cascade is actually as much a danger to sort of an existential threat to humans' ability and other species' ability to live on Earth as climate change. It's just a little less urgent, we're a little less familiar with it, but it's another set of sort of planetary boundaries. And so aspects of it, for example, N2O, nitrous oxide pollution, contributes to climate change, but it also contributes to things like smog, acid rain, acidification of water bodies, eutrophication. So it's an important contributor to our environmental footprint and often, as I said, overlooked. And so we wanted to encourage campuses to understand and reduce and manage their nitrogen footprint as well as their carbon footprint, but we really didn't want to add a whole new reporting and tracking initiative because we already have way too much to do on that front. And the good news is that many of the drivers of your institutional carbon footprint are, or I guess good and bad news, are also drivers of the nitrogen footprint, which means both in terms of tracking and management strategies, there's some real synergies. There's one maybe nuance here, and it's kind of depicted in this comparison, which shows one of the nitrogen footprint network schools, the difference between their nitrogen and carbon footprints, which is that more often than not, the carbon footprint tends to be pretty heavily driven by on the energy side, and the nitrogen footprint, by contrast, tends to be more heavily driven by the production of food purchased and then served by the campus. But that, of course, also has a carbon footprint, and many of us are doing work to be more sustainable in our dining and food operations, so the nitrogen footprinting is helpful in that respect. Okay, keep having technical difficulties here. Apologies again. All right, so what SIMAP does is it translates the most up-to-date and rigorous science available from bodies like the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the Nitrogen Footprint Research Network that I mentioned before into organizational level applicable methods and data. We translate things like the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Standard to higher ed, and we work, of course, in concert with groups like those presenting on this webinar, not only to streamline reporting, but also to better align our definitions, our boundaries, our parameters, which Chris alluded to a little bit earlier. So how does that work? You enter your campus activity data, data about your stationary energy use, for example, or direct transport energy use, electricity, and then upstream things or downstream things like commuting, business, as noted here, food purchases. That was a big addition to SIMAP when we created it, was the ability to do the carbon footprint of food. And out of that, you get both the carbon and the nitrogen footprint. So it's the same data you're tracking and entering, and you're getting both footprints out of it. How does it look? This is a screenshot. So, you've got a login, navigation across the top, and that navigation then takes you to different screens where there are the sub-navigation across the left-hand side, and across the top you see there's places to enter institutional data, a lot of real estate around data entry, which is can be done a number of ways, that mostly tables, results, and then customized results views, which are reports, which have again the tables and graphs. There's a data management function, which allows you to do a lot of importing and exporting and kind of tailoring your results and reports. And we have a slew of resources, training, user's guide, import templates, opportunities for FAQs and so forth on the resources page of SIMAP. So if you haven't checked it out in a while, it might be worth your while. So for those of you that haven't yet stepped away from the spreadsheet, important to know what is the difference between that old carbon calculator, because we know many people are still using it or using versions of it. And so there's a lot of updated methodology that's happened over the last several years because these methodologies continue to evolve to reflect what the community of campuses and businesses and communities are working on in terms of greenhouse gas management and tracking and what we're learning together. So the list here reflects some of the big things that have been updated since the kind of previous tools that contributed to SIMAP. And it's going to continue to evolve. And that, of course, is an important thing to be able to communicate to your stakeholders, by the way, that this is always going to be a modeled estimate, not a measurement. And so they need to expect that it's going to evolve. That's part of the process. Of course, as I mentioned before, another new big thing is food in the tool. So we can now see the carbon footprint of our food purchases, which on average tends to be about 15% for users, as well as the nitrogen footprint. And I don't know how many of you saw the new report coming out from the IPCC that was linked, that was leaked, but there's a lot in there about the links between soil health, carbon, food production, and climate change, and our need to completely revamp our food production system. And so this tool helps create some really important linkages there. And of course, we're always updating emissions factors, and there's a lot of transparency on the resources tab around those emissions factors and calculations and methodologies. So we continue to develop the tool. We have some plans for some new functionality, the ability to have accounts that allow you to have more than one campus and one account, the ability to tag and filter, the ability to do a complete scope 3 calculation, which we've been wanting to do for a long time. Those are all in the works. Of course, always annual emissions factor updates, and working with and looking to you all for where we need to go next with this evolution as well. So in closing, just say we so appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with you all over the years as sort of SIMAP users in a community. We now have over nearly 600 institutions who are using this for their official footprint tracking. It's an efficient way to do multiple footprints. It's credible based on global science, accurate and transparent. And really our goal here is, and always has been, leadership from the sector and supporting that. So your participation and collaboration with us allows us to continue to support and maintain this dedicated user-driven accounting tool for higher ed, to conduct and publish research around it, including research we're working on with Second Nature about trends and benchmarks right now, and to together identify synergies for tackling big global problems like nitrogen, pollution, and climate change, which of course we all care about very deeply. So I will leave it at that. Thank you all again.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. Over to Steve Muzzy from Second Nature next. And just a reminder, please keep the questions coming.
Okay, I'm unmuted. And sharing my screen, can I get a check to see if this is showing?
It's showing.
Sorry, in present mode?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, excellent. Okay, thank you. So Steve Muzzy here, Senior Manager at Second Nature, and I'm going to talk today about the President's Climate Leadership Commitments and our reporting platform. Just to recap, this is a fairly kind of, in the last couple of years, amendment to Second Nature's mission, which is to accelerate climate action in and through higher education. And so in would be through the climate leadership commitments, and then the through is working with folks like We Are Still In, which is an aggregator of subnational actors to continue to advance climate action in the absence of any federal government action in that space. And then a newer program we have called the University Climate Change Coalition, or UC3, which currently is at 19 North American research universities that have agreed to partner and share resources to advance solutions for local and global climate solutions. So here we're just a quick kind of recap and history and overview of the signatories in the climate leadership commitment. So the orange represents those that are doing both carbon and climate. Carbon and resilience. And so that's about 103 campuses that are doing both. The blue are carbon commitment signatories, and we're at about 450 and in 48 states. And just some history. So this is the kind of current incarnation of the American College and University President's Climate Commitment, now called the Climate Leadership Commitments. There are 3 distinct commitments: carbon, resilience, and then if you do both carbon and resilience, you are a climate commitment signatory. And then when the ACU PCC launched, In 2006-07, there was as a public institutional commitment, the reporting platform was released in 2008 to help drive action and assess progress towards the goals outlined in each individual institution's commitment toward carbon neutrality. So as we dig in a little bit around the reporting platform and what it is, so there's a reporting period, so annual reporting, it's January 1st to May 1st. This was obviously in preparation for 2019, but the priority report is the annual progress evaluation, which is mostly a greenhouse gas inventory. And this was a change a couple of years ago to integrate the GHG inventory with the progress report on the climate action plan. And so now we call it the annual progress evaluation. And then with the expansion of the commitments, there was the steering committee now is asking that all signatories review and revise, if necessary, the climate action plan every 5 years. And so this would be for all 3 kinds of signatories. And just no, I forgot to mention, so since 2008, our database has thousands of greenhouse gas inventories and hundreds of climate action plans. And we're getting now kind of the second, the next revisions of climate action plans, which has been exciting. We'll talk about that in a minute. So again, this is just the dashboard taking a look, and it's missing some information. So all your legacy reports are below here as a signatory when you log in. This is what you would see, and your annual progress evaluation submitted and drafts, and they're all, you can edit at any time and go and submit at any time. And of course, we've heard already about the data sharing partnership we have with SIMAP, and this is just showing how that works a little bit quickly. So we are collecting the outputs that SIMAP calculates through the inventory, and so this pretty much, if you use SIMAP, 90% of your annual progress evaluation is completed. Just quickly showing how they connect back and forth. There's a little work to be done in both dashboards. You need to be logged into both, but it's pretty quick. And so along with that, we've worked together with for all signatories. So the other piece we wanted to talk about is the climate action plan and the kind of revisions that we've done to that. So now for carbon reduction goals, we're asking everyone to submit, share at least one stationary combustion goal and one purchased electricity goal to be able to compare across institutions clearly. And these are 2 outputs that are definitely in control of reducing by the institution. So the other kind of major amendment we've done to the climate action plan is the adding of resilience. Sorry, is someone trying to communicate with me? Nope. We had to add the resilience strategies and goals for the climate commitment and resilience signatories. And so there are kind of some preset under the 5 dimensions of resilience strategies that can be selected. Once those are selected, you then add a short, mid, and long-term goal. And just a quick note here, carbon commitment signatories can opt in to doing the adding resilience strategies and goals. It's not required, but climate commitment signatories, this is for you. You can't opt out. Let's fill these out. And just here's an example of anyone from the general public coming to the reporting platform and checking out recent climate action plan. So this is Temple University's 2 screenshots. So there's the carbon, and here's the resilience. And just another recent climate action plan, including resilience from the California State University of Los Angeles. Just some really amazing work that's happening with the formalizing of partnerships around climate resilience. And then, of course, we have guidance on how to incorporate resilience goals and strategies into the climate action plan for signatories. And the other thing we've done is we're on a monthly basis kind of tracking the newly submitted climate action plans, and you have direct links to the individual institution's dashboard, as well as a direct link to the climate action plan file in their CAP form. And that can be sorted by state, carbon class, carbon neutrality year, and year that the CAP was submitted. And that is a signatory resource. Just request it. Then want to
just a quick time check. You got about a minute left.
Perfect. This is it. I just wanted to. It's been mentioned already, but SIMAP signatories that subscribe to SIMAP can get a discount on their tier 1 subscription. And then again, GRITS and Second Nature are partnered, so signatories can get a free basic access to GRITS. And that's it.
Awesome, fantastic. Thank you, Steve. Next up, we've got Brendan from Portfolio Manager.
All right, everybody. Could you just confirm that that's showing up?
Just click on display settings and
okay,
switch your screen. You should be good.
All right.
There you go.
Thank you, everybody. So just going to give a quick tutorial on Portfolio Manager, what it's about. So Portfolio Manager was launched in 1999 and built on the principle that the foundation of good energy management is good information. So the tool is intended to assess a building's energy use, water use, waste and materials, and greenhouse gas emissions for energy. It's free, online, and secure. Any type of building can be benchmarked in the tool. And I have some bullet points here on what benchmarking allows you to do, including comparing your building against other similar buildings nationwide, target improvement efforts on lowest performers, identify potential problems by looking at monthly trends, and see the impacts of improvement efforts, including on costs. So this is what the tool looks like when you log in. There's a tabular structure to the tool. So this is at the portfolio level. You can share and connect with other users to share properties, do internal and external reporting, and apply for Energy Star certification. And at the property level, you can set goals as well as track energy use, water use, and waste and materials. So the couple key features and differentiators. The tool is known in large part for the 100 Energy Star score, which compares your performance against similar buildings nationwide in an apples to apples way. It's available for many types of properties, but not all, and typically requires building level metering for all energy sources. Also, based on that, Energy Star certification is available for many types that can get 100 scores. For scores of 75 or higher, indicating top performance, you can earn Energy Star certification, which is a free recognition from EPA. And also, we have a lot of training resources and help desk with FAQs and support via email. So if you have questions, if you are new to the tool and want to learn how to use it, that we have a lot of resources just because we're a slim team that's focused on doing a lot. So I have three links here when we're sharing around the deck after to each of these resources. So in terms of compatibility and integration with the tools, I thought it was worth mentioning how folks get data into the tool. So there are three main ways to get data in. One is manual entry, so fat fingering in information. Two is bulk upload spreadsheets. So we provide a series of spreadsheets that you can use to upload your data step by step. Three is web services. So there are a number of companies as well as a growing number of utilities that provide easier access to benchmarking data, including by connecting directly with Portfolio Manager. So in those places where those services are provided, you can connect with utilities in the tool and they can get your data in directly. So it really reduces the effort of benchmarking. Also, per who's on the call today, we have a reporting template that you can use if you're already benchmarking. You can take your output data from Portfolio Manager and use it as inputs for ASHE. So we have a reporting template for that. There's also an API with grits. So right now it's just one way, but if you're using Portfolio Manager, again, you can use that output data and connect directly with grits to get information about your buildings into their platform. There's also an API with LEED, with USGBC LEED's existing building recognition. There's also a lot of other connections, like I was talking about the companies that have tool connections. So we have a map, EnergyStar.gov/utility data, that shows the places, the utilities that offer this service. So I encourage you to check that out if you haven't. You just type in your zip code and you can see if your utility offers that service. And here's a link that EnergyStar.gov/data exchange most active. This page has the list of companies that do the most benchmarking work and have those web service connections with the tool so that they can make benchmarking easier. Our user base. So in 2018 alone, we had 270,000 buildings benchmarking in Portfolio Manager. There are also 32 state and local governments that use Portfolio Manager as their tool of choice to implement benchmarking laws or benchmarking requirements. And one foreign government that also uses Portfolio Manager for their buildings. Last we had over 35,000. We've had over 35,000 buildings certify as Energy Star. Which is recognized by more than 90% of Americans. So it's a growing thing. Here's what that looks like on the outside of a building. And last, some recent enhancements. So we've added demand tracking, a 1/100 water score for multifamily properties, notifications in the tool to users, so we can send alerts. There's also alerts in the tool for utility web services solutions, so like that map I showed just in the tool, so it's a little more live. We've added customization to graphs and tables in the tool, monthly metrics for electricity and natural gas use, and are planning to redesign our reporting tab. And that's it for me.
Fantastic, thanks Brendan. Next up will be Kat from USGBC. And just a quick reminder, this is an 1.5 hour long webinar, folks. So this content will go through approximately 1:10 Eastern, and we should have about 15 minutes for questions, 15 or 20. So Kat, over to you.
Okay, great. Is the screen showing up correctly?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. It's great to be able to share what we're doing at USGBC. I am a director on our technical solutions team, specifically focused on supporting higher education. And I'll get going with the rest of my slides. So today, the tool that I'm going to be discussing, no surprise, is LEED certification, specifically focused on existing buildings, which has recently undergone a bit of a transformation. Many of you are likely familiar with LEED, having either worked on a LEED certification project or worked in a LEED certified building. But for those of you that don't know, LEED is a framework for identifying, implementing, and measuring green building design, constructions, operations, and maintenance. LEED is about market transformation, and over the past couple of years, we have been focusing on improving LEED to continue to raise the bar with defining leadership in green building while pushing market transformation. And the result is LEED v4.1. This is an updated version of LEED. It's available for beta as a beta for project teams to start using today. LEED v4.1 implements the goals we established to improve v4 of our rating system to continue to recognize leadership while make the rating system more accessible and streamlined. We have done this in many ways across building design and construction, interior design and construction, and homes. But what I'm going to focus on today is LEED v4.1 for operations and maintenance certification. LEED v4 O&M 4.1 O&M is a simple data-driven path to LEED certification for existing buildings, making it accessible for more projects than any other version of the rating system. LEED O&M has evolved by fully integrating building performance, providing a clear framework for achieving certification through measured performance. O&M is now a data-driven rating system that it incorporates strategies to establish best practices and data to track and quantify performance. LEED O&M and building performance now looks like this. This is an image of a building's live performance score as displayed on the ARC platform. This performance score reflects the building's performance across 5 different categories. Each category score is then weighted and assigned LEED points. And the 5 categories are energy, water, waste, transportation, and human experience. And here's a quick look at the data behind each of these scores. Energy and water use at least 12 months of whole project consumption data, which can be fed directly through Energy Star's Portfolio Manager. Waste looks at the total waste generated and the total waste diverted. Transportation score, as well as 1/3 of the human experience score, looks at occupant surveys to support the data needed to calculate that information. And then the last 2 pieces of human experience score, looking at CO2 and TVOC concentrations in the building, that information is pulled from air quality testing. Fundamentally, LEED v4.1 for existing buildings allows you to enter data, which then earns your project points across those 5 categories. Then you use those points plus 7 prerequisites and 10 optional credits to certify your building. If you already have a certified building, then you can use the building's previous certification in lieu of documenting prerequisites and additional credits. Another way to say this is previously certified projects, building design and construction, interior design and construction, and operations and maintenance can use performance data to demonstrate the LEED certification level and earn a v4.1 O&M recertification. So the weighted performance scores add up to a maximum of 90 points. Projects can earn additional points by achieving selected credits. These credits contribute up to 10 points, and therefore the corresponding LEED certification level is determined based on the weighted points from each of the 5 performance scores, plus the points from other credits, out of a total of 100 points. Once a project has 365 days worth of data and a point total of over 40, the project can submit for review for certification. The performance score is the heart of LEED v4.1 O&M certification, but that's not its only function. The performance score also provides analytics to help building owners and operators better understand and quantify the environmental impact of a building. In this example, energy, the platform calculates the carbon emissions of the building. The ARC platform also displays performance of a portfolio of buildings, which could be multiple buildings on one campus. This example is showing buildings in a hypothetical school district, indicating the total performance score of each project. Portfolio views can also compare each category's performance across buildings to help better manage the environmental performance of multiple buildings. I have a few recent updates and enhancements of LEED and ARC. The first one I touched on, recertification, can be achieved for any previously certified project, even if it has not been certified under O&M, using the performance score. The ARC platform can now use custom energy grid calculation. And ARC has announced automation partners such as Measurable, which can help automate data into the platform. So that was a quick overview of LEED, O&M, and our recent version v4.1. So thank you for your time.
Great, thank you so much, Kat. And last but not least, we've got Mark Orlowski from GRITS.
Thank you, Joe, and good afternoon to many of you, and good morning to some of you. It's great to be with you. I'm excited to share with you a little more about GRITS and what we've been working on since 2012. GRITS launched originally in 2014 on Earth Day, so it's a little over 5 years old, but we keep adding new features and functionality. So what we'll be talking about today is version 3.0. But before I begin, I just want to thank ASHI and all the other sort of co-presenters and organizations. I think it's really neat to bring everyone together here. And in looking over the list of attendees, I know there's numerous higher education institutions represented, but I also saw plenty of local governments, county and state governments, K-12 schools, companies, other sectors, service providers. So definitely be talking mostly to a higher ed audience here, but we'll be talking to others as well. So just to briefly jump in here, GRITS, we built it because we wanted to help replace spreadsheets effectively. We realized that while there's tons of tools out there for tracking data in different areas, projects are really an area that seems to be the domain of spreadsheets still. And so probably many of you or your colleagues within your organization use spreadsheets to track this kind of, return on investment data, financial, sort of other financial metrics like internal rate of return or projected carbon savings for the project, an individual project. So that's sort of why we built GRITS. We designed it to be really easy to use. You train people on how to use it in a half hour. We have a number of partnerships which were alluded to earlier, including with Second Nature, also a national initiative with Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which in addition to covering colleges and universities, also covers municipalities and other governments, K-12 schools, and hospital and healthcare institutions, as well as cultural institutions. Right now, GRITS is in use by over 800 institutions all around the country, as well as internationally in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and just recently the UK. So we built GRITS because we wanted to sort of really have a better option, something that would be sort of save people time, but also give them better access to the data. It allow them to collaborate across teams and departments within an organization, and also to share the data externally in a way that you really sort of couldn't do through spreadsheets. And so part of GRITS is this library of thousands of already completed projects, which I'll touch on in a minute. I already partially touched on these slides, but this is sort of the idea, is to sort of make it simple, sort of let you track your proposed, in progress, and completed projects. We even have high school students using this tool. It's not a tool that necessarily has to be used by engineers and for other engineers. We built it to be used by everyone. So one other thing to highlight here before we jump into the actual tour of GRITS, we've got a number of partnerships and other alliances with APA members, which is Facility Manager Association, which is the Energy Star Portfolio Manager users, Rev Campus Challenge, which is a nice NYSERDA program in New York, Second Nature. We already have a link with Portfolio Manager, and we're planning in the future as part of our GRITS goals expansion, which will be coming out in the next 6 to 9 months, to have links with SIMAP and the reporting platform Second Nature, as well as with STARS. So this is a screenshot of GRITS, and I could show you screenshots, but I thought it'd be more interesting today to actually jump out of PowerPoint and jump into the live tool. So that's what we're going to attempt to do. A little bit of high wire act, but why not? So this is the dashboard of GRITS. It shows you a quick sort of snapshot of your project level data, so how much you've invested, how much you've saved, your portfolio projects. Obviously, it tracks energy efficiency. It also tracks water, waste, renewables, even transportation and fleet-related projects. Your annual tracking data is below, so you can click in and see individual project expenditures and rebates sorted in chronological order by fiscal year. Your own recently modified projects are over here, and there's a shared library of projects from other institutions over here. Most of this data is a sample account, so don't worry about the exact dollar figures. The library is real data. So this is the project section. This lets you do all sorts of interesting things like filter down and only look at your planned projects under the status level, choose proposed only. You see 101 projects. Maybe you only want to look at lighting projects. You can uncheck everything, just scroll down to lighting projects, to lighting, and instantly be looking at only lighting projects. You can do keyword searches, like LED. And further search down, you can see the individual projects below. You can select them and bundle them together to track them as a group over time. You can flip over to Google Maps integration. You can do anything you want sort of in this section. You can also bulk upload data into the tool through a spreadsheet template. You can download your data back into spreadsheets very easily. Lots of different functionality. Where things get more interesting is a project details page of GRITS. This is where you add and update data over time. Everything sort of auto updates and auto saves as you work. You can select the type of project, the description, to give you a sense. We actually worked with ICF on some of these features when we originally built GRITS, but if you choose HVAC, for example, you have a very comprehensive list of HVAC related projects to track within. You can select your buildings from a list of buildings, add a new building, or import buildings from Portfolio Manager. You've got your cost and your timeline down here. We have nearly every type of resource you could want to track, including electricity and steam and lots of other building related fuels, transportation related fuels, even maintenance is in here. You can sort of look at what kind of measurement verification methodology is going on. And then over here on the right, this is where it gets interesting. You get financial savings, energy savings, and emissions abated on an annual, thrill to date, and life of project. These tables are automatically calculated for you, all your financial metrics, payback, ROI, net present value with your own discount rate, internal rate of return, unit cost per ton of abated carbon, and everything auto saves and auto updates as you work. So if you want to make this rebate 20,000, we can change that to a $20,000 rebate. Watch these numbers, they're all going to change in about 2 seconds, and you've got all new numbers there recalculated for you. You also can generate a PDF sort of snapshot business case, which is pretty nice with all the sort of key business sort of case data there, just instantly generated for you, which can save you a lot of time. You can also share any project you want through a custom shareable link. If you share that with someone else, they don't need a GRITS login, they just go look at it, and it's live data from GRITS. You can also attach projects and other data to the tool. You can customize your emissions factors. You can do all sorts of other more advanced features. The libraries where you find everyone else's projects, so they said almost 3,000 projects. You can filter by individual institutions, by type of projects. Maybe you only want to look at projects in athletic facilities. You can do that in 2 seconds. And then you can go deeper and actually look at individual projects. So that's that. The reporting system is where you can do charting and graphing. These are all interactive, so you can mouse over them. You can change them as you'd like. So if you don't want to include certain projects in the tool, you can redraw it on the fly. And when you're happy with it, you can download it as an image file. In 2 seconds, it'll download here, and then you can open it up and be looking at what you just downloaded 2 seconds ago. So that's pretty easy. You can look at data based on energy savings, waste savings, water savings, financial savings, or carbon savings, and look at individual projects or everything happening in one building or everything across your entire campus or site, or those custom tag groups. We also have this public dashboard feature, which lets you embed this in your own website, which is pretty neat. Different types of data, you can customize what you want to include. It's really easy also to add a new project into GRITS. So here's a sample project I pulled up just a minute ago, entered in, took about a minute or two to enter this in. And so just to go in and create and click create project, and in a couple seconds, it will generate the project and do all your initial calculations for you. So it's pretty straightforward. If you want to share this with someone else, you could turn on sharing, grab the shareable link, and go click on it and be showing this project you just created to someone else moments ago. We also have a GRITS guide, which is really useful, which is also online and available to help you walk through any features. Just to give you a sense of the public dashboard, I know Mike Pomeroy from McAllister College, I think, is on this webinar. So here's McAllister's dashboard, how they use it on their website. University of Illinois has also used GRITS for a number of years. Here's what their dashboard looks like, and Santa Clara University. So just in sort of wrapping up, a couple final slides to take us to closing here. I just want to sort of show the cumulative impact of GRITS. Obviously pretty substantial. Over 400 or nearly 400 million. This is a lot of data. Over $400 million in financial savings being tracked to date. In terms of what you get sort of under the free version through these different partnerships or initiatives, you can get free access. Most people on this phone, if you're at a college or university or another nonprofit organization, you can get free access to GRITS through one of the different ways. Or you can get a free trial if you don't have free access, or you can upgrade to the unlimited version. So with that, just wrap up. Here's my contact information. We'd encourage you to visit the website if you'd like to know more, or if you'd like to get a login and try out GRITS for yourself, simply email me. So I'm looking forward to questions from everyone, and thank you for your time.
Awesome, thank you, Mark. I just have a few wrap-up comments here, and then we'll get into Q&A. So please go ahead and get your questions in if you have them. All right, so that was fantastic. I know that was kind of a rapid-fire summary of a whole bunch of different content. So before we get into Q&A here, I just want to take a moment to try and pull this all together into a few actionable steps that you can take right now to start to get a handle on a sustainability data management strategy. If you don't have one already. So I'm sure there's some folks on the line who are probably just getting started on their sustainability data management journey. I'm sure there are some folks who are sophisticated in certain areas, but are looking to grow in other areas, and probably a few of you who have a pretty good handle on all this stuff and are just looking to improve best practices. But for those who are looking to build a kind of comprehensive sustainability data management plan, here's a few foundational next steps that I think will be useful. So first, it's very important to set clear goals. I mean, to a large extent, everybody always says you can't manage what you don't measure, but it's also true that you should determine what to measure based on what you want to manage, right? Do you care about benchmarking against peers? Do you care about cost reduction opportunities? Do you care about identifying and prioritizing energy conservation measures, climate and resilience planning, either to mitigate your current emissions or to adapt to the changes from climate change? Or do you care about reporting and recognition, right? Figuring out which of these are your highest priorities will help you determine what to track and which tools to use to track it. Second, it's important to take inventory of what's already being tracked. I mean, what data systems do you already have in place? You may find that energy and sustainability data is already being tracked in some unexpected places, like I've seen in colleges and universities. Maybe your facilities team has a spreadsheet that you don't know about. Maybe your finance team has an expense tracking system that will enable you to pull down utility bills that you didn't think were centrally tracked. And then another important question, and I see a question about this in the Q&A that we're going to get to, is do you have building level submetering in place? You can still make progress without building level submetering, but it does provide dramatically more granularity at the building level. So it's something you may want to look into to make better use of some of these tools. Third is which stakeholders do you want to engage? I think we can all probably agree that when it comes to energy and sustainability initiatives, if the facilities team isn't on board, you're probably not going to get very far. So talk to facilities early and often, but also think about engaging the finance department, administrators, and even students. And particularly if you're pushing administrators to adopt some of these practices, students can be a great source of both low and no cost labor, but also some political pressure to get this done. I can speak as a student who applied a lot of political pressure to get energy and sustainability investments made in undergrad. They can be a great resource in that department. So don't think that this is purely a facilities or operations issue. And finally, once you've considered those three things, now it's time to plan and execute. So having worked with many institutions and other organizations that don't have a comprehensive plan, I would highly recommend writing a central sustainability data management plan so that it's clear what you're tracking, where it's tracked, and what tools are in use, and who's responsible for it. And ultimately, this is where you're going to select the final set of tools and platforms that you want to use, though I would encourage you to start discussions with these tools much earlier in the process to figure out kind of how their capabilities map to your needs. So everyone on the webinar today is more than happy to talk to you as you get started and start to evaluate who you might want to work with. A couple of closing notes before the Q&A here. We do just a couple of events coming up. Data mentioned the ASHE conference coming up in October. Many of the tools, most in fact of the tools represented here, will also be at ASHE. Green Build is a fantastic conference to learn about green building practices, technologies, and data management in general. And a quick note that we are planning to take the information covered in this fact sheet and put it into a short, or in this webinar, I should say, and put it into a short fact sheet or guide to kind of centralize this in written format. So that's not out yet, but we will be in touch about that in the future. Here's the contact information very quickly, and these slides will be posted so you can grab it from there, but I'll leave this up for a couple of seconds in case you want to jot down some contact info. And with that, let's get into Q&A. So I saw a couple of great questions coming in here. I'm actually gonna.
So Joe, you can go into sharing pane and pause.
Yes, just paused it, so I think we are good. Okay, so I have a question for pretty much everybody here, whoever would like to take this, but a couple of folks pointed out that not a lot of higher education institutions have building level submetering in place, so kudos to the ones that do. But for the ones that don't, since it looks like a lot of the tools we talked about today are kind of reliant on building level submetering, what are some things you can do if you're not tracking at that level? I know Brendan, sounded like you had some thoughts on this, or maybe you want to go first.
Sure, thanks, Joe. I just want to mention briefly that Energy Star Portfolio Manager, you can benchmark at the level of data is available. The tool's meant to accommodate whatever setup you have. So we have what's called campus benchmarking. So you can put in data if you have, say, a master meter for electricity, but then, individual metering for natural gas. You could benchmark sort of each of those at the level that you have it. And it's also a bigger question that it's something that as a program we're trying to sink more energy into, to think if there are tools, resources, or support that we could provide to help people get over the barrier, because I know it's a big upfront barrier, and it is sort of key to having actionable information. But in the interim, you can still benchmark in Portfolio Manager at least.
Great, thank you. Any other folks, any other panelists have thoughts on progress that you can make if you don't have building level submetering?
Joe, I'll jump in for a second. This is Mark. I mean, I think obviously the reality is many institutions in higher ed and elsewhere still don't have submetering, and that's a challenge to deal with. But I know as it relates to grits, many of our users that have grits access and use grits on a regular basis don't have submetering in place. So that's definitely not an impediment to using a tool like grits to sort of help figure out your business case analysis and sort of present sort of a strong financial picture about the impact of the projects that you might want to invest in and undertake within your institution. Obviously, you do have limitations as a result on the measurement and verification side after the project is completed if you don't have submetering, but that doesn't negate from the opportunity that you can present and the type of data you can track in grits, even if you don't have any kind of submetering.
Awesome, thanks, Mark. Any other thoughts on that before we move on? Okay, great. Well, this one is for probably some combination of SIMAP and Second Nature regarding greenhouse gas tracking. We had one person ask, the college that I work for would like to input and track greenhouse gas data on a regular, perhaps monthly basis, rather than scrambling to do it all at the end of the year like everybody always does. So I wonder if thoughts from Jen or Steve on the best way to kind of get a handle on tracking your greenhouse gas data on a monthly, quarterly, or sub-annual basis.
Sure, I can start. In SIMAP, you are able to enter data points for any time frame, on any time frame that you wish. So it specifically is designed to accommodate, for example, monthly data entry or quarterly data entry. You define your fiscal year, and then you can have as many entries as you need for as many line items, in a given time period. So that's actually one of the advantages of the online platform over the spreadsheet, which didn't make it so easy to do that. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that was great. And Steve, I'm curious if you have any thoughts when it comes to reporting on greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, it seems that the annual GHG inventory is sort of still the currency of greenhouse gas tracking. Is that kind of what you're seeing, or are you seeing more institutions start looking at some sort of monthly or dynamic tracking and reporting?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting question, and I would assume those that are reporting annually and regularly are probably tracking on a monthly basis or even more granularly. But we also get it in the other direction where, if it's a smaller school and they're not implementing any major kind of projects or capital investments, that they're really not going to see major changes in their footprint, and so we, every other year reporting. But again, we're just seeking the outputs. It's the tools, so SIMAP, Portfolio Manager, those that are tracking inputs are really helpful on the building in, the more shorter timeframes.
Gotcha. Great, thank you, Steve. And I would just add to that wherever it is that you're getting your utility data, it is worthwhile, just purely from forgetting about the greenhouse gas inventory stuff, just thinking about this from a data quality and data controls perspective. I can tell you, having helped many organizations navigate a absolutely killer end of year process where the data quality was very poor and very inconsistent, having some checks and balances in place with clear responsibilities for verifying that data is complete and correct on a rolling basis can save you a lot of trouble well beyond just greenhouse gas inventory preparation. So that's another example where having a data management plan with clear roles and responsibilities and checkpoints is a huge boon.
And actually, Joe, do you mind if I chime in? One more thought that what you just reminded me of is that I think a lot of these tools, and certainly SIMAP, you have the ability to have multiple users in one account. So that could really aid that process in terms of, hey, if it's the energy manager's job to just drop that data in there for you every month, and then it's there. There's the ability to do that, so you can sort of delegate across the organization and have more regular reporting. That's the lovely dream. Hats off to whoever's going in that direction.
Amen. Great. I have a couple of rapid fire LEED related questions for you here, Kat. So someone was asking, is there a LEED kind of prep checklist or workbook to see how close an existing site is to getting a potential LEED certification? Is sort of a low cost, low effort way to see if you're anywhere near potentially being able to achieve certification?
Yeah, you can go to our website, and we have a LEED V4.1 landing page, and on that you'll see the beta guidebook and some scorecards. If you go directly to ARC at ARCScoru, that's spelled ARCSKORU.com. You should probably also do a Google search and get there. There is a free, I believe, 60-day trial with ARC, so you can get an idea of where your performance score would be before you register your project. And if you already have a certified project, you can access ARC for free as well. Your project will already be in there, so just use your LEED project ID, and you'll have access to ARC, and you can enter your data and see where you land.
Awesome, thank you, Kat. And we had another question asking you to dive just a little bit deeper into ARC and particularly integration with the other tools discussed today or other data sources. So if there's any more color you could provide there, that would be great.
So ARC is it's a separate entity from USGBC. It spun off a while ago as a for-profit entity. And so the way that we talk about ARC is that LEED is powered by ARC, or it's the platform used by LEED. And so the ARC team is working on a lot of ways to expand and streamline ARC data. And I'm not involved in a lot of those conversations, but we did just have a press release that identifies a handful of organizations that we are now partnering with to help automate data. So go to the ARC website for that press release, and you can get a little bit more information there.
Awesome, thank you. And back to the submetering topic, one of the folks in the comments or the questions pointed out that if you're moving towards, if you want to get to campus submetering on all your buildings, you don't necessarily have to do it in one fell swoop. You can start with your energy hog buildings first, get the process down, pick a technology provider that you like, and then look to expand to other buildings. So while there is some cost and labor involved in submetering, you can also start small and kind of grow from there. I don't know if Brandon or anybody else on the line has any further thoughts on that topic.
No, I think that's a great point. Along with, new construction, since there's still a lot of that happening in higher ed, it makes sense that with new construction and with buildings that are energy hogs, that you focus on them first.
Awesome. A question to synthesize a couple of the others I see here is that, we open up the newspaper every day and we hear about machine learning and artificial intelligence and big data and all these fancy automated ways that all kinds of different data is now being managed and operated. And yet it seems like when we turn back to our campuses and the buildings that we're working with, we're a couple of decades behind in terms of how this is being done in practice, with spreadsheets still being used, some of these tools getting increasingly good at talking to each other and automating these processes, but still, perhaps not as good as you'd think it might be, given how far technology is moving. So I guess question number one is, why does it continue to be so hard to get a handle on building energy data? And the second part to that question is kind of, where do you see this universe heading, looking 20 or 30 years down the line as software starts to get more sophisticated? And I would open that question up to anybody who'd like to take it.
So this is Jen. I would say my short answer would be a big part of the challenge continues to be utilities, and utilities reluctance to share data, even with the account holders, but especially with third parties. And looking forward, that is beginning to change, partly because there are so many communities who are doing great work around energy disclosure and benchmarking, and putting pressure on utilities as well as institutions. And I think it will, continue to change exponentially. Sure hope so. But I'm hoping we're hitting a tipping point. We're not there yet, but I think that's a big part of why we have seen the lag, if you will. I don't know what others think about that.
Okay, great. A question for Mark. I'm curious, it was great to get the demo of GRITS and see the financial and carbon and energy savings results that we're seeing for projects. It seems to me that y'all have a sort of gold mine of project information with, I think, thousands of measures now, right? Looking at the actual observed returns, including some that were measured and verified. So do you all have any kind of ambitions to take that and publish that in some way, or otherwise kind of share the aggregated insights from all the projects that you're tracking?
It's a good question. Thanks, Joe. Thank you to whoever asked that question. We have talked about that a little bit internally. Right now, I think we're pretty excited about sort of that data being available to GRITS users, even sort of users under the free access level, that you can go into the library and sort of pull up different types of projects in different regions or from specific peer institutions and get some really granular data in terms of carbon savings, in terms of energy savings, in terms of financial returns for different types of projects, and be able to use that to hopefully make better, more informed decisions and to prioritize projects at your own institution. So that's sort of where we are. I can definitely see us sort of doing some kind of snapshot or sort of trends report or highlight some of the top line data. We're not going to be publishing sort of the project level data widely. Obviously, that's sort of within the GRITS tool. One obviously catch with doing that kind of sort of report is that the minute you publish it, it's already out of date with a tool like GRITS, and that's partly why we've, I think, hesitated a little bit in not doing a report like that already. In that you instantly have sort of a bit dated information sort of from the minute you publish, unfortunately. Whereas with obviously the tool, you're logging in, you're looking at all live data. So that's sort of where we are. But if there's specific types of data you're interested in related to library, feel free to reach out to me offline. Happy to discuss that or potentially be able to provide some high-level aggregate data to you, depending upon your organization and your needs. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Fantastic, thanks. Okay, well, I want to leave a few minutes at the end here for wrap-up items. So I think that concludes the Q&A. And Data, do you have a few words for the end here?
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to all the panelists for providing this very informative webinar. And we had a couple of questions about the resources. So the webinar was recorded, and we will post the recording with all the slides in the ASHE Campus Sustainability Hub, and everyone will receive an email about tomorrow at this time with the link to this resource. But before we conclude today's webinar, I also want to let everybody know about our next webinars, which will take place one tomorrow, starting at 3 p.m. This webinar will provide an overview of, one second here, the case study of sustainability reporting integration into undergraduate level classwork, including lessons learned and evolving syllabi. The webinar next week will showcase a few different partnership methods with local communities to help inspire change. And the webinar next week, it's brought to you in collaboration with the HIASC network. So you can learn more about these webinars and our other professional development offerings on our website. And I hope you'll all join us again for a webinar or maybe at the conference. And a final reminder that you'll get a post-webinar survey on your screen once the webinar ends. Thank you to all of our attendees and to all of our presenters for attending today's webinar, and the presenters for sharing their expertise with us. If there's questions, you can reach to the individual presenters or email us at education@ashi.org and we will get back to you. I hope everybody has a good day. Thank you.